Hello friends, in today's Snippet series, we are going to discuss about the amendment of the Constitution. In order to adjust itself to the changing conditions and needs, the Constitution of India has been amended several times. Article 368 of Part 20 of the Constitution deals with the amendments. The power to amend the Constitution rests with the Parliament, but the Parliament cannot amend those provisions which are the part of the basic structure of the Constitution. This basic structure doctrine was put forward by the Keshavananda Bharati case of 1973. The Constitution prescribes three types of amendment: by simple majority of Parliament, by special majority of Parliament, and by special majority of Parliament and consent of the states. For the details, let's look into the following videos. Then let's look into the major amendments of the Constitution in the point of view of examination. The first one is related to the preamble. The preamble of the Indian Constitution has been amended only once, through the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Since the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976 made significant changes to the Constitution, it is also known as the mini-constitution. Three important words were added to the preamble through the 42nd Amendment Act, that is socialist, secular and integrity. Then which are the cases related to the preamble? In the Barobari Union case of 1960, the Supreme Court held that preamble is not a part of the Constitution. But later on in the Keshavananda Bharati case of 1973, Supreme Court held that preamble is part of the Constitution and can be amended using Article 368. The Supreme Court firms in this view later in the LIC of India case of 1995 that preamble is a part of Constitution. Then we are going to deal with the amendments related to the formation of states. The first one is the Fifth Amendment Act of 1955. The Fifth Amendment Act of 1955 empowered President to prescribe a time limit for a state legislature to convey his views on proposed central laws relating to the formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries or names of the existing states. Earlier, there was no time limit for the state to convey their views. Then the second one is the Seventh Amendment Act of 1956. The Seventh Amendment Act of 1956 abolished the existing distinction between the states among Part A, Part B, Part C and Part D. Then after the Seventh Amendment Act of 1956, Part A and Part B's places were transformed into states and Part C and Part D places were transformed into union territory. Then now let's look into the amendments which are related to the fundamental rights. There has been debates that whether the fundamental rights can be amended. In the Sajjan case of 1965, the Supreme Court held that the Parliament can amend any part of the Constitution including the fundamental rights. But in the Golaknath case of 1967, the Supreme Court held that the fundamental rights cannot be amended. Later on in the Keshavananda Bharati case of 1973, the Supreme Court held that Parliament can amend the fundamental rights, but the Supreme Court also put forward the basic structure doctrine. In the 24th Amendment Act of 1971, the Parliament has given the power to amend the fundamental rights. In the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, which came as a result of the Swaran Singh Committee recommendations, the scope of Article 31C widened so as to cover the legislation for the implementation of all directive principles of state policy. Through the 44th Amendment Act of 1978, the fundamental right of property was abolished as a fundamental right and it was made a legal right. Now about the amendments related to the evolution of fundamental rights. The judiciary through judicial creativity and the Parliament through several constitutional amendments have widened the scope of certain fundamental rights. The first one is concerning with the right to equality. Through the First Amendment Act of 1951, the Parliament has inserted Article 15.4, that is special provisions for the advancement of socially and educationally backward communities. It is through the case of Chambak Dorerajan versus State of Madras in 1951. Through the 77th Amendment Act of 1995, there is a reservation in promotion for SC and STs. Through the Article 16.4b, a carry-forward policy has been instituted. According to this carry-forward policy, the certain claims of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes which were not considered in the previous years were to be considered in the succeeding years. It is through the 81st Amendment Act of 2000. Amendments related to the right to freedom. Through the First Amendment Act of 1951, the Parliament has enlarged the scope of reasonable restrictions to the exercise of right to freedom on the grounds of friendly relations with foreign states and public order. Through the 16th Amendment Act of 1963, the Parliament enlarged the scope of reasonable restrictions to fundamental rights of right to freedom on the grounds of sovereignty and integrity of India. The 86th Amendment Act of 2002 inserted Article 21A. Article 21A deals with the free and compulsory education to children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. Amendments related to the directive principles of state policy. The 42nd Amendment Act of 1976 added 4 more directive principles. According to it, Article 39 were added. Article 39 deals with this to secure the opportunities for the healthy development of children. Article 39A deals with to promote equal justice and free legal aid to poor. Article 43A to take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries. Article 48A to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife. Through the 44th Amendment Act of 1978, Article 38 was added. Article 38 necessitated the state to abate inequalities in income, status, facilities, and opportunities. The 86th Amendment Act of 2002 modified the subject matter of Article 45. It necessitated the state to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. 97th Amendment Act of 2011 added Article 43B, that is the state to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and the professional management of cooperative societies. Now let's discuss the other provisions of some major amendments. The First Amendment Act of 1951 added the 9th schedule, that is the 9th schedule to protect the land reform and other laws included in it from the judicial review. Then the 24th Amendment Act of 1971 made it compulsory for the President to give his assent to a constitutional amendment bill. Then the 39th Amendment Act of 1975 placed the disputes relating to the President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Speaker beyond the scope of judiciary, that to be determined by an authority determined by the Parliament. Then the 42nd Amendment Act of 1970 made certain other provisions. Its major one is that it added the fundamental duties, that is Article 51A or Part 4A. It also made the President bound by the advice of the Cabinet. It also provided that the laws made for the implementation of dpsp cannot be declared invalid by courts on grounds of violation of some fundamental rights. Then the 44th Amendment Act of 1978 also empowered the President to send back one's advice of the Cabinet for reconsideration. The reconsidered advice is binding on the President. It also made the President to declare national emergency only on written recommendation of the Cabinet. The 44th Amendment Act of 1978 also provided that the fundamental rights under Article 20 and 21 cannot be suspended during the national emergency. Then the 52nd Amendment Act of 1985 added the 10th schedule, that is anti-defection. Then the 61st Amendment Act of 1988 reduced the voting age from 21 to 18 years. That is the 61st Amendment Act of 1988 reduced the voting age from 21 to 18 years. Then the 69th Amendment Act of 1991 gives certain special status for the Delhi. The Delhi was recognized as the National Capital Territory of Delhi. The 73rd and the 74th Amendment are very important. It provided the basis for the local self-government in India. The 73rd Amendment Act of 1993 granted the constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions. 74th Amendment Act of 1993 granted constitutional status to urban local bodies, that is the municipalities. Then about the latest amendments, the 101 Amendment Act of 2017 led to the introduction of Goods and Services Tax, that is the introduction of GST. The 102nd Amendment Act of 2018, that is, gives the constitutional status to the National Commission for Backward Classes. The most latest amendment in the Constitution, that is the 103rd Amendment Act of 2019, that is the 10% economic reservation. We are coming to the end of this video. We will discuss the procedure for amending the Constitution and the tricks to study these amendments in the coming videos. For that, stay connected with us. If you are new to my channel, please do like, share and subscribe. Stay connected with us. Stay safe, study safe. Thank you.